How you going? This is a new song, and it was written. It's based on a true story from Victoria, regional Victoria, about something that happened to a family that owned a farm. And I've held on to it for a while, but I've put it into song because I think it needs to be out there. There's no names or anything, but this really happened in our time, and I think it's worthy of a tune. So this is it. It's called "The Ballad of the Farmer's."
We were farmers near Castlemaine when COVID came and shut our whole town down. And as the kids and I hid at home, my husband risked it all by working to keep our little farm alive, whilst I did everything that the government told me to. And I made sure that my kids followed suit. I'd always thought that the end of it all would be another war, and not me and my grown kids sitting here and watching the TV, and not me and my kids watching TV. And outside the windows, the wheat continued to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. As the barley rolls and dances with the wind. But then the vaccines arrived to save us all, so we lined up and rolled up our sleeves. We lined up and rolled up our sleeves, gratefully, 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 gratefully. On a Monday night, my daughter suddenly died when a blood clot burst inside her lungs. Then a few weeks later, my husband found my son on our kitchen floor. We found our son dead on our kitchen floor. We buried our beautiful kids with all of their unrealized dreams. And outside the windows, the wheat continued to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. And outside the windows, the wheat continued to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. As the barley rolls and dances with the wind. And everyone knew what had happened, but no one would say. Together they were all as silent as the moon. And then COVID moved on, just like the flu. The only difference is that I was now alone. For my husband is gone now too. Our doctor told me that his heart that was so strong, it had seen him build this farm, had just suddenly given way, had just suddenly given way. And outside the windows, the wheat continued to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. And outside the windows, the wheat continued to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. As the barley rolls and dances with the wind. So now I'm selling the farm, I mean, what else can I do? The fences need repairing and the harvest is long overdue. Plus I know the bank will come knocking soon. I know the bank will come knocking soon. And outside the windows, the wheat continues to grow as the barley rolls and dances with the wind.
Before I bring my guest on, tonight we're going to talk about the trials and tribulation, the beauty of the freedom movement. But I just want to say from my point, and he'll probably say the same, is that these are just my opinions. I'm not saying this pretending I'm any leader or anything like that. These are just my opinions of the last 5 years, what's gone wrong, what's gone right, and everything like that. So it's something that I want to talk about. Thanks, Randall. Anyway, my guest is someone I've been wanting to get on for ages. I had to hang up on him last time because I got sick, but we finally got him on. And this is Glenn Pearson. G'day, Glenn. How you going?
Good on you, Michael. Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure. Thanks.
No problem. Can you just tell us, if you can remember, what was your life like before COVID? Where were you? What were you doing?
Before COVID, I was probably not in a great place. I was probably chasing my tail a lot. I was probably doing the things that I thought I needed to do and, having some success, but certainly it was a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and not really taking stock of life as it is and kind of living in a bit of an illusion of life. And in some ways, good comes out of bad, and COVID was a good time to reflect on those things and to get my
really
life in order a bit more.
That's really interesting because there has been benefits. Most people actually tell me, g'day, Chris. Most people actually tell me that it's helped their lives. I actually don't want to go back to my pre-COVID life. I prefer the person I am now that I've become through having to deal with depression and struggles and everything. And it's changed me, I think, for the better. Is that the same for you?
It has. I did get a sense that there were some changes that needed to be made. And when we got into some kind of a routine in COVID, they needed to be routines that we could live with. And I'm actually still probably living some of those routines since. I haven't really changed. Because I can see some merit in taking a step back and doing things in a different way, which that space allowed, because obviously we had to, there wasn't as much travel opportunity and other things. So, and it was also a kind of a culmination of a lot of years of confusion, in the sense that a lot of people became aware of certain things during COVID, which, as a person who has always been interested in what makes the world tick, I was a little bit concerned with how things were going, and that was part of the difficulties I was having in life. But now that there's many people that I can talk about these things with now, it's a much different situation, for good and bad.
Let's start, because we're going to talk about the freedom movement, because basically what happened, COVID came in like a tsunami of darkness, really, and fear and propaganda. Fear, everything was meant to make us go, whoa, what's happening? But things happened within that where suddenly people stood up, and they didn't stand up as groups. A lot of us were just individuals, some in families where they were the only one that stood up, or other things like that. So let's start with you. When COVID came, when was it that you woke up, or were you aware from the start, or did something happen that made you go, hang on, and did something else happen that made you go, okay, I'm going to do something?
I have been a trained educator, and also in finance and also in valuation. And look, I'm not a perfect person, but I've always taken my professional considerations seriously. And that involves kind of looking into the reasons why we have professional requirements. Now, they're not always obvious at first, but while you're doing a job, you start to realize why they are there for a reason, because they keep things on an even keel, or they can do justice for the customer, or they're required to provide that professional service, and in a way that's recognized as a proper methodology. So I guess during COVID, I found myself holding on to those skills and techniques and that kind of analytical methodologies, and really trying to push out the noise and stick to myself, who I didn't think was crazy, and really try to help others see through that kind of lens as well.
Yeah. Hannah, how did you know you went crazy? What was the test you took? Because I know crazy people don't think they're crazy, but all of us must at some point think, am I crazy here? Because everybody's going this way and I just think it's insane. Was there any point where you sort of questioned your own sanity?
Of course, yeah. And I had to reassure myself on many occasions, to the point where it wasn't. I felt, oh, this isn't fair, having to go to these lengths in order to keep myself in check, and to reassure myself that there should be, the greater powers are supposed to be taking care of those things for me. And here I am, kind of felt like we've been kind of open to the insanities of corporate world, in terms of their insatiability for profit and their ability to communicate propaganda to the masses. There was no filter. So that felt unfair. But were there times when I felt crazy? I felt, well,
Okay, Christian.
yeah, probably. But I can't remember, to be honest, how that particularly felt. But I know I was noticing things in people around me that I hadn't noticed before. And I felt, am I going to be crazy and say something?
Okay.
That was the test of what craziness really was. And I mean, I've said to people, now's not the time to be running down the street naked in the middle of the night, telling everybody that something bad's going on. But you do get that feeling sometimes.
Okay, I just move on to the subject of the show, and from my perspective, so I'll just start with this. What I think the first really incredible thing the movement did was meet each other. And we met each other either at the stand in the park, or we met each other in marches, and suddenly we were marching and meeting, and just basically meeting each other, with the great meetup, of course, being the convoy to Canberra and the epic park, where we really met and sort of met people who we had this strange spiritual connection with. It was something different than I'd ever experienced before. That's what it was like for me. What are your thoughts on that? Or was there something else you saw that was sort of the beginning of us?
Yeah, look, I haven't been involved in a lot of protests or gatherings, because I've got a couple of young kids and it's not necessarily, but I saw Canberra coming, and I was really thinking about that. And but at the end of it, I didn't end up going. But I had gone to a farmers' protest. I think, I can't remember when that was. Might have been early 2024. And I was a bit disappointed with the numbers there. But that was kind of the first time that I saw a few people that I still recognize, like Wade Northhausen was there, Craig Kelly was there, and there was the sense that there was a community building around. And so, but what's really been good for me during for the last few years has been meeting up regularly with a group of men online.
Yes, that's correct. That's where I met you. Yeah.
And that came about through Hoodie did a tour of Australia.
Yeah.
Graham Hood. And we met him. And, well, when I say we, I think there was like 100 people from here, and filled out the local bowling club. And that was actually the first instance of getting together with other people. And yeah, we did some bonding sessions, like some early kind of bonding, where Hoodie asked men to stand up and to take some responsibility for what's going on. And really that was the catalyst for the online group, and for other things as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk just about the marches. So in 2024, the marches basically in Victoria, the biggest marches I think Victoria had seen were right up to the Kill the Bill, and then we were ignored, and then basically we'd had, I think there was talk that there was like 400,000, maybe 500,000. Basically, we filled Burke Street, and it was just so many numbers. It was just staggering, and ones before that were really big, but nothing. Dan Andrews just ignored us as though we were some petulant children. Then we went to Canberra, and we were at Canberra for this huge, huge gathering, and again, we were ignored. And I actually wrote something to say I think that was their strategy. They knew there was going to be people standing up. And even though, like, I think they screwed up at the shrine where they shot us, because that inspired a lot of Australians to come to Canberra. That was like the catalyst, going, you're shooting people at the shrine. So they're making mistakes as well. But since Epic, the marches have all been going down. We did have a big one recently that was pretty big, but nothing like we've seen. And I wonder if that's because people go, well, we've done that and it did nothing. And they want to put their limited time and their energy, and if they're going to risk being arrested or risk being kicked out of society, they want to do it for something that they think is going to have a more of an effect. They're my thoughts. But what are your thoughts on that?
Obviously, I've got mixed ideas about how to go about that. I mean, there's theories on the effectiveness of protest and how to go about it, and I think that we're seeing the limits of showing displeasure with people and asking them to do their job better. When in actual fact, they may be doing their job exactly as they want to and to their own benefits.
Yeah.
So until we address some underlying factors that may go into that, then we may not realize how we look through their lens, how we look from their perspective as protesters. We may be missing the mark, and that's potentially something that needs to be explored honestly, if that's to be the case, because I think there was a sense that we live in a commercial kind of consumer world, and our consumer choices matter. We've been told if enough of us like chocolate ice cream, then they're going to make more chocolate ice cream. And I think there was a sense that if we just said that we don't like this, then the market or whoever's doing what we want will change accordingly. And I think that's been a bit of a change in. I think people have had to dig deep to realize or to look at, maybe my opinions aren't as important as I had previously thought when it comes to voicing them and people taking them as seriously as I had previously thought. And so we're reevaluating the situation. And look, I mean, it's not probably unsurprising, because when faced with a challenge, what would you normally honestly say is something that, how would you normally approach a challenge? I would say I'd probably try and find the least resistance or the easiest option first, and then we go from there, and then we're finding the water level, so to speak, and when that's found, then that can start to produce better results, I would think.
Do you think, though, that the fact that they did, because the politicians use a formula. If one person goes to a rally, I think it's like that means 1 to 10 to 20 people want to be there. This person is an ambassador for 10 to 20 people. But let's use 10. Let's use the lesser. Now, if there was 1 million people at Canberra and there's questions around that, where there was sort of 500,000, 600,000, but let's just round it up to 1 million. That would mean that there was 10 million people there, which is close to half the population. And in Victoria, with some of the big marches there would have easily been a third of Victorians there in spirit. And I think what the marchers told us, with the way they ignored us, was that whatever was happening, the government was now serving someone else, and they weren't serving us. That was
Yes.
what we exposed in the fact that because at the time, the police commissioner of the ACT got in front of a parliamentary hearing and said there was 6 to 10,000 people at the march, at the Epic March. Now, the ABC just came out with that Sovereign Citizen show on Four Corners. They said it was the biggest march in Canberra history. And when we were at the court case with Paul, literally every police officer that went up was saying there was thousands, it was just and more. In fact, one of them even said 1 million. So it's clear that the police commissioner allegedly had the wrong numbers or something. So either he had the wrong numbers, or maybe, I don't know. But the thing is, that was not true. And what also they showed in Paul's case was the footage that the police had, which clearly showed a gazillion people. We'd never seen that footage before, but the police showed it to try arrest Paul and or convict Paul. So they were clearly lying to us, and they weren't serving us anymore. Even the people, there's no sense of listening. But basically, because they weren't listening, the marches started to dwindle. I'm not putting down people who march now, but I'm just saying that's what I think is the reason we're not seeing the enormous numbers we've seen before, because people basically gave it their all week in and week out. Even in G'day Mantra, even in Melbourne, most of the people who are marching in Melbourne weren't from Melbourne. They were coming down from the country, from Albury and Wodonga, from Wodonga, from Kerrang, from all these other places, and they'd be on the train for 4 or 5 hours. They were doing huge trips to come to these marches. And so I guess they were hoping for some sort of result, which didn't happen. Anyway, so this is what I think about the marches, that we actually expose the fact that they don't care about us. There's something else going on here, and we hear all this thing about agendas. So my belief is that what we showed was there is definitely agenda. Whoever's behind this has a vision, and we were just some expected opposition, and they just basically, in the end, waited us out like waiting for a child that's having a tantrum to tire themselves out. What are your thoughts on that before I move on?
Sure, mate. Well, look, when you're talking about movements of people, it is based on some emotion, and when the emotion is not able to be generated as much because the situation has passed, then it's not as easy. But that's the difficulty of the people maintaining and demonstrating their power in the situation, because it's hard to motivate large numbers of people. But on the flip side, I think what you touched on was the thing about truth, in the sense that it can be inferred from ways that you least expect. So when you say that the police commissioner at the time deliberately undersold the numbers, then the question is why, and then whatever fits best in that situation. So we're left to kind of piece things together from alternative sources of information and make sense of it that way, which is the funny nature of truth. But I think the marches have not been in vain, because
I'm not saying they're in vain. I'm just
No,
trying to get to the lessons that we've learned from them, you know?
And the reason for that is because conflict has a big part to play in exposing truth. Just the fact that people are put on the spot and they have to make a choice of integrity to say there was this many people here, or they took the other option to try and cover up numbers, that starts to chip away at the narrative.
Yeah. The other thing that the marches did, they gave birth to the independent media. This is where we first heard of Rukshan. Cafe Lockdown was born during the marches. That was inspired Cafe Lockdown. Hoodie came to prominence in Canberra. He was already prominent because of his rant about the planes and about when he quit the airplanes, when he quit Qantas. But this is what it was. Most of I know Topher had been around before, but Topher came to more prominence. Monica Smith, all of them really. And so the media was born, and the media was born. I think the independent media was born because the people who were at the marches and the people who were witnessing the marches could see extraordinary numbers. This was history marching down the streets of every capital city and most of the major towns, and the media were lying constantly. I was a few thousand there, 2,000, 3,000, when there was scores, maybe hundreds of thousands. And so we saw that the media was lying. And so that was the other benefit from the marches. But I'm not saying that they were in vain, but I'm trying to understand why they tapered out. And from my perspective, we weren't seeing any bang for our buck. The other beautiful thing, though, is like when we're in Canberra, I said this to one of the two police officers, because they were portraying us as like, peaceful but rowdy. I said, if you had 1 million people there was not one shop looted, there was no cars burnt. And in fact, the only people who suffered any injuries were the protesters themselves. And that was the same in Melbourne. The only people who were brutalized were the protesters themselves. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. That speaks to the character of our movement,
Yeah, I think Australians should be proud of themselves for the majority of the way that it did pan out.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's something to definitely take away from that time.
Now, the next thing, I don't know if you've been involved in any of this, but the next big thing that's still been going on, but it's not as big anymore, but for a while it was crazy, was the court cases. I talked to Julian Gillespie recently. He's living in Port Hedland at the moment. And he told me he's basically moving away from the courts because he believes the courts are just corrupt, especially when it comes to COVID issues. We've had a few little wins, but he said basically they're doing things they shouldn't right the way up to the High Court. And so what are your thoughts on all the court cases? Personally, I think it's essential that we did them in order to show, okay, that path is not going to be open to us. You know what I mean? It's cost a lot of money. We've lost millions and we really haven't achieved anything. So maybe we've got to look somewhere else. But what are your thoughts on the great court battles that we've had?
It's not my specialty, but I would refer to the parable of the widow who keeps knocking until the lawyer's just gonna do their job to get rid of her, out of, But as far as the High Court goes, have you heard any update on Beverly Peirce case?
No, I haven't. I'm following. I'm following Mai Lee. I mean, in Mai Lee, they're just lying so much. I mean, she found out now and said it on our show that the Health Commission gets the transcript done in Word and then changes it. They say they're just cleaning it up, but I mean, that should be everyone sacked and it should be a huge scandal. Nothing, you know what I mean? And the only success that I know we had, which stunned everybody, was William Bay's incredible win. And that was the greatest win I think we've had. The rest of there might be minor ones, but with some of the cops have got their jobs back and stuff like this. There's minor ones, but the most significant one was William up against 2 barristers and 10 lawyers, and he won by himself.
I think Williams was a case against a statutory body representing the industry, I think. So they've been demonstrated to have overreached, and I think that's where Mai Lee's coming up against as well, in terms of her case. But what you've brought up is something that I think that we'd have to talk over a lengthy period of time and bring up a whole bunch
Mm.
of examples. But what you've brought up is the idea of what would be considered orthodox and what we're experiencing in terms of the unorthodoxy that is in the statutory bodies and government, etc. So what you said would be orthodox. You would expect that the transcript was done loyally to what was said, and that it was probably not as expensive, and it was done in the basis of justice for the person at court. Now, the fact that that hasn't happened kind of breaks that expectation of orthodoxy that we have in Australia, and it comes from a number of reasons. Basically, from our history, our civilization, which that orthodoxy is the basis of civilization, and so we also have the history of cultural Christianity as well that would presume those things, and I think we've been living on assumptions that
Yes.
have been slowly eroding in terms of over time. And so here we are. We can catch up quickly, though, which
Mm.
we're showing the ability to catch up quickly to get that water level of where we're at and get those tools together. Tools in terms of understanding the new orthodoxy, where it comes from, how to determine it when it's when we how to know it when we see it. I think Jess last night mentioned you don't know these children's shows and what they're putting in them until you know
Yeah,
what to look for.
definitely. Yeah,
So that's a tool, and
yeah,
yeah, it's there's definitely ways to protect ourselves and to create our own freedoms. We can't bring freedom to the whole world, and look, the
no,
fact that America is trying in some ways, I don't know if it's delusional or in self-interest, because as we've seen that USAID was the financial front to bring freedom to the world, but it ended up being a slush fund for politics.
yeah,
So yeah, these what was it? Charity fraud is in the spotlight, but it just goes to show another orthodoxy that is being manipulated through the use of language and for other purposes, and really just slipping under people's radars. I know it's slipped under people who are a little bit older much easier because they're more accepting or more wanting to accept that what they see is what you get. It's a charity, it's doing the right thing, it wants to help people. They're probably not getting paid very much to do that. But in the end, it's not quite what it seems. Not
mm.
quite right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, one of the things we've been facing is a lot of us were ostracized from families, we lost our jobs. But the other thing we were dealing with was we were living in illusions, and COVID blew them all away. You know, we thought the shrines weren't just uh, basically symbols of who we were. This is what we're prepared to die on. This is the hill we're prepared to die on. Our forefathers did it, so we'll do it. And when it came to our turn, we didn't. They just became meaningless, really. You know, and the RSL is covered with all these words of mateship and courage and this, and it really meant nothing. You know, I remember one of the first, or even the first two Anzac. The first one they had us standing outside with candles, but when they allowed people to come, I was in Perth, and the unvaccinated soldiers who were at this illegal gathering that we had, Anzac Dawn thing, they weren't allowed to attend, and so they were actually in the army or had fought for us, and so yeah, that I find that one of the things our movement has had to deal with is actually the death of our identity. And we've sort of been, I think I tell people sometimes that, you know, Australia now is an old billboard near the side of the road with a fading picture of Paul Hogan going, throw shrimp on the barbie, and one of us is graffitied underneath, and your neighbour under a bus. And here's where we are. But there's a guy here there's a guy in Melbourne called Paul Lassig, and he's got a brilliant idea that we've been pushing for a while, saying we need a renovation, not a revolution, because we're great renovators and we can get our country back to basically its foundational principles and stuff and that. But anyway, now we're going away. The
That's
other
fine.
thing that we've done, and I've been watching people do this, and I think this is one of our successes, is people getting onto the councils. I know the Port Hedland Council got dismissed, but around Australia, every time they have a council election, more of us get on. And I think that has been a very clever strategic move. I don't know if it's done strategically, they're meant to do it, or they're just running for it. But I think that is a really great thing, because it gets our voice into the parliament, even if it's at the base. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it seems that the council have been potentially an avenue for influence. So again, it's not something you would assume would be the orthodoxy, that a council would be open to influence beyond its general local council area. But potentially that is the case, and in that sense, it seems like a very logical first and a doable way to make to start a grassroots movement against the influence, rather than trying to take to the, I mean, I wouldn't know where to start at the High Court. But I know people, local people, and when you know them and you can speak to them face to face, online or in person is even better. That can make a big difference compared to trying to take on a big bureaucracy. So that's what we've got in our favor, is that human connection. And yeah, it needs to start there, and we need to build on it rather than taking it down from the top necessarily if we want to see change. And
so you're saying come up from the bottom, grassroots.
yeah, yeah, that's right. It's that's where it I would think is the way to go. And look, as far as look, I think people shouldn't be too hard on themselves either. In terms of we were talking about the shrine and then the shock factor, and how we kind of I think there was a lot of ambush involved personally, and to be honest, you couldn't have been as bad even if you didn't know what you were doing. And that was one thing I said, if you didn't know what you were doing and you made certain decisions all in a row, you still couldn't be as consistently in favor of one particular direction as what we were seeing. So so from that perspective, the other thing that I was thinking from what you're saying is it's a very different battlefield, let's say. And I know this is paraphrasing from what Hoodie has said in the past. It's not, he would rather not be in this kind of a spiritual fight, a fight of the spirit. He would, I mean, it almost makes a physical war look better in comparison, because it's not hurting the soul. But you don't have a clear direction. You don't have orders given, and you don't just have to. You don't feel that you never know if your next step is the right step to take, or the next word to say, or whatever. It's all very much stepping in the dark, unless you do have some kind of professional or spiritual basis to lean on in order to go forward. And I think getting back to what you were talking to Jess last night as well. I mean, she obviously has said how she's turned to better foundations in order to move forward as well.
Yeah,
but I don't have any desire to go into council.
Oh no, neither do I. No, but within our movement, there are people everyone brings different skills. No one can do everything, and you see it in people. You see this guy's got great skills for that, and so I see us like. I'll come back to that actually. I just want to move on to the next thing. The biggest problem that people say we have which we've had for a long time, is division. And I think what happened, we got to Epic, and there was a huge mob of us, and we loved it. We just, anyone who was there, it was, everyone will tell you, this gives you goosebumps thinking of it. I do think though that Epic came with the gift of knowing you went alone and knowing you're a part of something great. But at the same time too, I think Epic came with a burden, a great responsibility of saying, listen, guys, the country's going this way, and there's a lot of you here that don't want to go that way. So, you might have to sort of figure out how you can make the country go the other way and work together. But that hasn't happened. What's happened is that it broke up into little tribes. So there's a Hoodie tribe, and there was a Bossy tribe, and there was a Guru tribe, and there was the Cafe Lockdown tribe, and the Wade Norshausen tribe, and the My Place tribe, and monikers with there's all, and a lot of the people interacted with each other. The audiences would go here and there, but it did break down into tribes. But when it comes to division, I say this a lot because I think this is one of our issues, is there's a paradox at the core of us, is that the reason we didn't take the jab, or if we took the jab, we didn't take any more and we decided to join the movement, was because we're black sheep. And we have the fortitude to stand alone and say, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care if the tribe's doing that. I'm not going to comply. I don't feel like I want to do that. The trouble is, the reason we don't do the herds is we're black sheep. And that's, this is a problem we have because we don't like being told what to do. Now, someone just said egos, but sometimes I think it's not egos. It's we left a community really, or kicked out because they were sternly telling us what to do. Roll up your sleeves and take this, or we'll lose your job. You'll lose this. And we said, F you. So we don't like being told what to do. And we don't like even being told what to do by our own mob. So if we're going to come together and work together, we have to find a different way to unite rather than there's a leader and everybody does what he says. It's where the respect model. But anyway, what are your thoughts on why there is such division in the community?
Well, first of all, I think what you're talking about is a willingness to suffer for your principles for the sake of your soul, and that is on a basis of faith. So you have faith in those principles. So in terms of tribalism, I think it's a natural type of condition. And what would you agree that the formation of the tribes has come about as a desire for finding a leader who wants to stand out and for others to be able to follow in that tribalistic way? Seems like a natural response from that basis.
Well, let's use Bossy as an example, because Bossy came across initially, we don't see him much anymore, but he was like, I'm a military leader, follow me, I know exactly what to do, I've been in the SAS, I've military training. And so a lot of people flocked to him, like he was a General Patton of our time or something, which didn't materialize. Hoodie, who I used to call the general, he came across like a great statesman, a wise man, a benevolent leader. And a lot of people gravitated towards him. And myself, I don't need a leader. So I've always sort of just followed and done my own thing. You know what I mean? And just go wherever the voice tells me to. So any following I've got isn't a following. I don't have a following of people that will do what I tell them at all. I think people just follow me to see what I'm doing and to see what I uncover and to listen to conversations like this. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that could be the reason. I know myself. For a while, there was one guy I followed who was pretty strong, and I thought he was going to be a leader. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe this man has it. Men gravitate towards them. But then he was just too divisive. It was just like divide, 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 divide. And I realized our numbers were so tiny, we could not we didn't have the resources to be further divided. We were constantly, our numbers were constantly shrinking, and whatever numbers we had to somehow remain together, even if it was
Mhm.
just on a respect level. So I sort of moved away from that, and I've just sort of been doing my own thing ever since. You know, I did think Damien was going to be the leader of the movement for ages because he had a great presence to him in the movement when we used to do the marches. Even the police used to follow him. Like we got arrested at the shrine together when we first met. They beat the living shit out of me, and they just led Damien away. Like, yeah, come, Damien, you come here, and beat the crap out of us. So the police he gave off an aura, and he had the height, and he was articulate, and he was incredibly brave man. So yeah, but and that might happen in the future. You know, who knows what? I don't know what's going to happen, but
Mhm.
that didn't occur. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and yeah,
Well,
I don't know. Sorry.
in that case, I guess we're talking about how we had big numbers of people marching and the numbers have dwindled. Doesn't say that they've disappeared. They may have just become disillusioned with some things, and
Yeah,
potentially some of those disillusionments could come about as differences of opinion or misunderstandings of the direction or the desire for what people want. And I guess I just throw back to you, if you don't mind, in terms of
sure.
when I say freedom, what does that mean to you?
Freedom for me is the ability for me to live my life my way as long as I don't hurt anybody else. To think the thoughts I want to think, to travel, uh, to choose for myself how I live, and especially to choose what goes into my body and not the government telling me what goes into my body. But I think the other great freedom that I have, that I think is the greatest freedom, is freedom of speech. And I really believe that freedom of speech is the only weapon we have against tyranny, which is why, in a way, like they're getting us to saying we're going to digital ID to care for the kids, they kind of want us to hand it over. Here, take it to protect the kids. Because if you hand it over, say I gave something to you, I said, look here, I want you to have my mobile phone. I can't really suddenly start a fight to go, hey, you give my phone back. You go, well, you just gave it to me, mate.
Yeah, and that was what was done in the sense that that agreement was assumed based on the take up, even though the take up was under coercion. That's not an orthodox assumption
Yeah.
to make on it in terms of agreement, which was done almost with the intent of predetermined outcome in terms of looking for that agreement to kind of give it some legitimacy at the
Mm,
highest levels.
mm.
That is not orthodox type of evidence of market acceptance. So I would just say that. But in terms of, so we're looking at a different type of freedom, but we're looking at a different type of authority as well. When you talk about market authority, you're talking about people willingly engaging in buying and selling of goods and services, and they know what the other person, what they're buying, they know what's doing, they have knowledge of those things, and that's considered even in the courts to be the standard for what a market transaction is, and to kind of turn something that's very grey and dubious and give it the tick of approval on that basis of an authority is, I think it was a predetermined desire for an outcome. But my particular, what I was getting at in terms of asking you what freedom was,
Oh,
again,
could I add to that?
yeah,
The
yeah, go
other
for it.
great freedom I think that we did have in Australia was you didn't used to lose your job because you had an opinion. You know, I worked in jobs where you worked with people who had all manner of crazy ideas, and you just lived with it. You know what I mean? Oh, that's crazy, Mark. He thinks we were all genetically modified apes, or there's someone else banging on about Port Arthur or someone, and no one got sacked for it. You do now, but you didn't then. So what the freedom you had in Australia was the freedom to be yourself, which is a great gift in a country that, yes, and that's like the blue bee thing. You know what I mean? You can, you still pollinate flowers, so you're still a part of society, but you're an individual in that with your own thoughts, and that's fine. So is one of the great freedoms we're losing, because literally now you have to groupthink or pretend you groupthink. I know I've talked to people working in the government. They say, if you mention anything about Palestine, Israel, they sack you, so they stay silent. I talked to a journalist today. He said if journalists criticize the government, they lose their jobs, or they won't get government contracts, so they just become redundant. So in order to try keep their jobs, keep their houses, the one thing they're sacrificing is themselves.
Look, it depends on the power of labor. We're talking about different time when perhaps people at different levels of employment or had different, leverage, so to speak, and maybe those times have changed, and perhaps people who make these decisions in human resources are overplaying their hand, and perhaps they're unintentionally missing out on a lot of skill and knowledge by insisting on such draconian types of obedience to politically correctness. So I think they also need to consider whether they're doing themselves a disservice. And I think we're seeing some change in the US on that front, where, for whether you like him or not, Trump is reducing that in the ways he can in the military, that kind of influence, and reducing the money that's going towards supporting that type of political action that has seemed to crop up in the workplace. And look, it's okay if they think that there's money to be made out of it, but I think a lot of the money's pulling out on the most extreme. We may have hit what people are calling peak woke. So we may be over.
I love it.
Woke,
Peak woke.
Yeah. But what I wanted to say is perhaps one of the things that I think people are disillusioned about in terms of the freedom movement would be the possibility that they think that it means that we don't want or like authority. And I think it needs to be kind of spelt out and actually said what freedom means in terms of relationship to authority. Now, personally, I believe in authority, but I believe in authority as the one that is what I would consider orthodox authority. And you can say, well, what is orthodox? I mean, you can look at what has been the case over history, what people just naturally expect. And you also have authority from, Christian authority and things like that. So those things go together to create a sense of what the sense of hierarchy needs to be, because we do naturally create hierarchies as human people. We create hierarchies. A hierarchy can last for a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got a job to do, it can naturally create a hierarchy, and then that can be finished up. Or we're talking about here the biggest hierarchy, which is the nation and how that's being formed. So I think it's a case to say that we don't believe in lawlessness. We do believe in law, but we don't believe in arbitrary law that creates injustice.
And
I think that's where that
so we're not
term
agents of
sovereign
chaos.
citizen is sort of trying to give the impression that that's what people are looking for chaos, when it's
Well, that's why they're now portraying us as sovereign citizens, and they're pushing that because they think that will scare the rest of the population. And here we are, a load of people who don't want to follow any laws, when actually the only law we didn't want to follow is we didn't want to take a vaccine against our will. That was it. That was the majority of us just said no. And for the first time in our existence, that meant, okay, you're thrown out of society. Dan Andrews said it very clearly. If you're not getting vaccinated, paraphrasing, you're out of society. And that's what's got a lot of people to do it. And so that was still my fundamental thing. Other things through, but I follow road rules. I pay my taxes. I've had all these people saying I'm tax bludger and I'm not. I've never been on the dole. I was when I was a young kid, but this whole time I've found a way to fund what we're doing. We're always trying to keep funding what we're doing because we enjoy what we're doing. Well, hopefully it's of some importance. But I follow the road rules. Yeah, man, I have no issue with that. But there are rules, and then there are draconian rules. And what I see as I live on the road, I see cameras everywhere. I see, and you get a sense that somehow a cage has been built around you. We hear all these things about 15-minute cities and everything like that. And I take everything with a grain of salt. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But, digital ID, I see China. And so now I'm sort of in a way of going, well, I'm not ever going to take the vaccine. But now I sense that we're heading somewhere that is too authoritarian. So, because trouble that word. But I don't think it's a place that's conducive to the natural soul of what Australians used to be.
And it's probably not conducive to civilization.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
we sense that, and it's not in our interest to not have, particularly if you're just an average person, you need that protection of the nation bringing justice, because that's our best protection.
Yeah.
Truth and justice is really our best protection. It's not, weapons or whatever. That's what we have. And if we're seeing a bit of insanity going on from the top, coming down, because it's not. I don't see it coming from the bottom up. I think I see the insanity coming from the top down.
Yeah.
So that means it's it means that our things that give us protection are in jeopardy, and those are the orthodoxies. Like, for example, we saw with doctors, the first thing that people should have thought was, what happened to medical privacy? Where did that go?
Yeah.
Why are doctors just being thrown out for not following the laws? I mean, that should have been a red flag, but it seemed to really not really get any response. It was
No.
very it was putting seeds on some very soggy ground, and it didn't really catch on how important those principles are.
Yes.
So I guess people who have had difficulty in their lives, who have understood that when you're at the bottom, you do rely on the justice in society to not so you don't get just steamrolled by someone, because you have intrinsic value as a person. And so that's what you end up relying on. And so, yeah, I guess when we're talking about freedom, again, it's an interesting to think that people talk about natural rights and where they come from. So we've got the freedom to choose based on our willingly choosing one way or the other. That's been, well, that we're in that position in our life. That is that's if you believe in God, then that's our sole purpose for being here, is to willingly choose to live the will of God rather than to live our own will. So that willingness to choose comes from love, so that we can share in that glory. So you take that away, and really, what have we got?
Yeah, that's right. There's an interesting that made me think. I used to say early on, I haven't said this for a long time, but I used to tell people when they asked me about freedom, I said, I think we have three core freedoms, and one of them is a goal, and it might be a goal from God. But the first freedom is freedom of choice, which came under attack. Basically, they removed it and people gave in. And the next one is freedom of speech. And I think the parents to another freedom. So if you use freedom of speech and freedom of choice to explore who you are and be your own architect of your own future, you can, if you persevere, find out who you are. the best version of you. And the fact is, you have that. You have a choice. You can go this way and become a killer or a drug addict or whatever you want to do. But if you persevere and become the best version of you, I think the most remarkable thing is that you are there to be discovered by yourself, which I think is a gift from something far greater than us. And one of the missions of that. And then once you find yourself, then you can start doing what you need, what you're meant to be doing on the planet. And I believe we are sent here for a purpose. I've met so many people who come up to me, even Jess last night. She wants a purpose in her life, and more than monetary. I think we've been convinced over the last, say, 30, 40 years that the purpose in our life is to buy bricked up air and fill it full of stuff. And that's it. And then go 60 or 70, get a caravan, drive around Australia, see you later. Or I actually think there are far more profound things to discover about yourself and that you're sent here to do. Number one being just helping each other. The people I really gravitate towards are the carers and we have a lot of them in Australia. And anyway, now I'm ranting. But
so it is a great irony, isn't it, where you lose yourself to find yourself.
Yeah.
And it's
G'day, Ron.
when people are in some people would see freedom as the right to do what you naturally want to do, and the laws are there to then hem you in and say, oh, you can't do that. And so you're playing a game of bumper ball where you just say, okay, there's the rules, and I'll try and get away with what I want because apparently that's what makes me the happiest. And if I come up against it, well, I'll see how far I can push it. Otherwise, that's how you do things. And that's not going to, as you said, to find who you the best person you are, because you really want to be wanting the ball to be down the middle, rather than trying to bump off the rules that society try to hem people in, not to be a cause of concern to society. But unfortunately, we've got corporations who are acting like unreconstructed children, who want to do whatever they want, and they say, well, I can do that if it makes more money, then that's okay, and I'll just do until the government or society tells me that that's not allowed. Now, that's all well and good until you basically bribe or blackmail or whatever way to take away that regulation, and therefore it's, well, I'm still doing what they tell me to do, but knowing that they're not actually doing their job properly anymore. So it's a real game, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, what they did then is they created a corporation. The corporation is a standalone psychopathic organism, a legal organism that just wants to make money. That's it. It just has to make money regardless. But it's populated with good people, but good people who are following the rules of this thing they've created. So that's why you hear of companies in Australia, but America's the best, where I think DuPont, where they're poisoning a town, apparently, according to the films, allegedly, and they know if they get caught, they'll get a huge fine. But by the time they get the huge fine, they've already made far more profit. So the profit will cover the fine, and they're still in profit. And here's where even like let's say, I mean, big pharma comes across like the new church, like they're a new religion. You go into a doctor's surgery, they're like altars to vaccines. Lots of healthy kids, and there's a vaccine. Have you got you this vaccine, this vaccine? Look at this healthy kid. Where in actual fact, it's a perfect business model. They no longer have to do decades of research. They can pump these things out really quickly. You're mandated to take it, or, for a lot of jobs, you have to take it. There's no comeback. You can't sue them. So basically, they're untouchable. And they've wrapped that, and I've said this before, in this false dogma that there's some miraculous thing, and then basically gift wrap it with a thing that says miracle. but miracle product. But the only one it's a miracle product for is the manufacturers, because they're making so much money. And here we are with all these injured kids, autistic kids. If you believe that, there's so many issues out there, and then there's so many issues from the COVID vaccine that they just ignore. I mean, we've been a subjugated tribe, our community, but below us now are the vaccine injured who are forgotten. In fact, the only ones who seem to acknowledge them as us when we have our people doing the Forest of the Fallen, which allows these people some sort of recognition. It's quite a beautiful thing, because we're not in the forest. We didn't die, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, and as a society, it's not addressing that issue properly while we're going to maintain a narrative that will not recognize certain things such as that. So that will probably be how it's looked at, when the history books are written. But
Right.
depends on who. Oh well, it'll be us, because but the history books are already written. Apparently, we know what's happening, what's coming. But it's very frustrating, isn't it? Basically,
It is. The other thing I want to bring up here, there's two other major things. Now, one thing is, and I've been a part of this too, for 5 years, where we have been banging on with the truth, trying to get people, 832, the truth will set you free. Look at the truth. Look at this truth here. And I said to someone once, it's like we've besieged their castle and thought if we could bring the truth to them, they would all be liberated. Or their prison, say. They're in a prison, is even better. And we've got the truth, and we can get it in the truth. Their walls will collapse and they'll all be free. And eventually we got so much truth, because there's so much evidence now. We got over the walls, and we found that the prison was empty. They never wanted the truth. They live now in a world of lies. And if you were to look out of your window at, say, something, say, a kilometer away, the government now says, if you're willing to propagate our lies and lie yourself or just stay silent, that's the fastest route to reach your destination, whatever that is. If you want to question us, or if you want to challenge us, or if you want to call us out for lying and you want to hold on to the truth, then there's a good chance you'll never reach it. And I think a lot of Australians now don't want the truth, because they realize it can actually endanger them, lose their jobs, lose family and friends. Easier to lie. And when I was in the trams before COVID, this new company came in, and that's what they did. They basically, before they did, the place was eclectic. All these different personalities, big guys, big personalities walking around. It was just wonderful to be around them. But when they came in, they sacked all the larrikins. They were all gone. And the Vietnamese drivers there, who'd come directly from the Vietnam War and got on the trams, they pulled me aside a few times and said, Michael, this is how communism starts. It's done to be politically correct, to keep you safe. But what it does is it just controls you. And people choose silence and obedience to stay away from the anger of the government, if you put it that way. And that's what I'm seeing happening now, that we've done a valiant job. I adore what we've done, but I do think we talk about waking people up. I think they are awake. They just don't want what we want yet. They're not interested in the truth. They want to acquire things or get job promotions or whatever they want. And they've just accepted that the truth will not get them that. Where we're, for some reason, defending the truth, holding on to the truth, because we think it's of great value. Well, that's my perception. What do you think?
Have you had an experience living in some of these countries? It was really I really empathized with some of the people that were from Eastern Europe over the years, and they're saying, "Look, this is just, we know exactly what this is," and they were some of the most outspoken people at the time, and
absolutely,
because it can be a very soul crushing experience. And they obviously were vehemently against it. Because it it's attacking, your masculinity, your sense of dignity.
Yeah.
These are the spiritual things that we're not used to fighting on. And really, I'm not surprised, to be honest, that people are not match fit when it comes to something that's been brewing for a long time, but came out of nowhere at the same time. So maybe we're not giving the time frame. We're not calling the time frame properly to how things are going to pan out. Things will pan out as they pan out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think we just, if you're going to accept the truth, we also have to accept the truth of where people are really at, rather than being frustrated with whatever that truth is. It is what it is in that sense too. So there's opportunities when you recognize where those things are. I mean, the amount of people that might be willing to get involved on a different level, on some educational level, or perhaps some kind of different levels rather than protesting levels. There's those potentials as well. I guess we've got to get into the head of a person who's feeling that way. And my experience personally, it's not so much the censorship from the government that's the problem, and although that is a problem, it's how people become very skillful at believing the lies, and they almost find a way to make it make sense, and they move on. But then again, life is so busy. I mean, it's not so hard to kind of just go, "Oh, yep, that's right, I'd take that." And even if you get that uneasy feeling, to the point where I think that the gaslighting or the political correctness that doesn't quite make sense, if we look back, there's been a lot of it, and we didn't even
Oh,
realize it. I mean,
tons.
I'm just thinking the moon landings. I can't
Oh,
believe
yeah.
that I never even bothered to look at it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." It's just one of those things that
I
wasn't
don't know.
important.
Joe Rogan says that. He says 1 minute he was happy, and then COVID came along, and now he doesn't know if we landed on the moon or not. I don't know. I really don't know. Do you
No,
have you come to a final decision on whether we did it or not?
I can't think that we did, because it doesn't make sense to say that we went there and we've lost all the ability to do it since.
Yeah, we've lost the
That
file.
that
NASA
that
lost the file on how to get to the moon.
that mental gymnastics, like we talk about mental health issues, it's that gymnastics that people are going through that's causing the mental health problems.
Yeah.
And we'd save ourselves a lot of money. We see, economics is not about making as much money as you can. It's doing the most that you can with limited resources.
Yeah.
Now, if you go, it's about not wasting things. It's about working together the best way to get the most out of the things without having to waste them. So without laboring the point, if we're going to have be sold lies, and then we have to fix up the mental situation by throwing money at the situation afterwards. It's just the waste that gets me the most in these situations. That's what frustrates me, because like I live on the smell of an oily rag, and I don't know how any other way to live. I'm not. It's just how I've been brought. And to be honest, like if you look back, there's only a couple of generations. People didn't have anything. I know I'm kind of probably,
No, that's
came
true.
out of
That's true.
the slums of Sydney, but, people had dignity,
Yeah.
and, but that was the difference. And that's
Yeah.
why you had people who just, they came from poverty, but they didn't care because they had dignity. And so it
Yeah.
seems that it's, it's harder for the rich man to get into heaven, because you suddenly start to be concerned more with your material possessions. And,
Well, I think that's what's happened here with us. There's going back to what you said about the Eastern Bloc. I've talked to so many really long, in-depth interviews and conversations with people from the Eastern Bloc, There's a lot of Polish people in Melbourne that I'm very fond of. Romanians and Hungarians, they've taught me a lot, and they've told me about what it was like there. The most profound interview I did was with this young woman who was living in Romania. Her father had been arrested for trying to escape, and he was in prison. And she told me that she had to go to school with a happy face as though nothing was wrong. And her mum had to go to work with a happy face as though nothing was wrong. They didn't tell anybody. And then they'd come home, they'd lock the door, and they'd cry all night. And then they'd have to go out again. They just couldn't see. You just could not show your public face to the world. And I interviewed another woman who was living in Hong Kong, Chinese run Hong Kong. And she said she feels like she's dying because she just can't show who she is to the world. You just cannot do it in the Chinese system. So you have to act, which makes you like Anne Frank, except I say this a lot, except the cellar isn't in your roof, the cellar is in your soul, and you live in there. And so this is where I fear that we're going. And this is why I fight so hard to stop it. But I just want to get back to division for a sec. I do think that as a movement now, we have to realize that there's a good chance that since this is so well orchestrated, whatever's happening, from the vaccine passports to even someone said the other night, all those plastic shields, they all turned up in one day. Suddenly one day is all these plastic shields. Who manufactured them so quickly? We did the maths of how long it would take to create that many ampules of the vaccine. They couldn't do it in 1 year. So had they prepared them well before? So, there's a lot of preparation went in for what has happened to us. Basically, a well-orchestrated propaganda machine and everything else that came with it. And we organically stood up. We weren't even united, and we managed to stop it. That's the beauty of what we did. But I do think that I've lost my train of thought.
Division?
With the division is that there could be infiltrators amongst us. There's an article you can read on the Einstein website called From Dictatorship to Democracy by somebody called Gene somebody. Anyway, I've read it twice now. It's free to download. And he says, this is what's happened. They will infiltrate you. And one way to find the infiltrators is to look for anyone who pushes division. Because if you're in a group that is so small, you need each other and you're spiritually connected. What would someone gain by striving to divide us? What's the end goal? What I mean? When we've got so many real enemies to face, we don't have enemies. So I think this is us becoming savvy enough to realize, okay, what is it here? And maybe getting some fundamental rules or a code of ethics to the movement that we go, this is our code, which I don't know how we do that, like getting a big group of people together and talking and going, this is what we do. I don't know. But I think a lot of the division is caused by people actively denying us. On CLO, we have a policy that we literally stick to from the beginning, is that we don't put other freedom people down online. It's because we don't want to spread division. So we might do it in the background, might chat about, but we don't do it online as much as we can, But the other thing too, though, when it comes to the other people not joining us, and I think this is something we could see us change our fortunes, is that, say you were on the other side and you didn't believe it. You didn't like it. You didn't like the fact that they're going to force vaccinate you again. But you've got children. You've got a mortgage, huge mortgage, car loans, all of this. And I'm telling you, hey, come and join us, brother. Come with the truth. Just lose all that. Get a piece of cardboard, write freedom on it, and get pepper sprayed. Come on, join us. And you're going like, yeah, And I think it's time for us to get real. We've been doing this with Cafe Lockdown now. Ever since I come out of hospital, I've been thinking about it, is trying to get a business structure to it. How do we fund this? this is why now we've got an affiliate. Our shop is becoming an affiliate. So if you want, you become an affiliate. You can help sell it, and you make some money for yourself. Other people get some product, and we get some money coming in, so that we can actually start helping our podcasters, these frontline podcasters, make money. We're getting, like I said, we're getting wine now. We're in the purpose of, we're going to have beef-free wine. We've got a company that's going to let us put that on labels, so people can, you can take it out to a dinner party and put beef-free wine on the table, as if like putting that on the table. And these are the ideas I think we have. There's the other thing we've been talking about is either setting up a group of op shops called either 832 op shops or Be-Free op shops or something, but it's our community running them. And so there's, say, Lynn here. Hey, Lynn. Say Lynn in her town just needed a job, and there is one of our Blue Bee op shops. She works in the op shop. So we help fund, we help give some money to the people working with us. There's some way to make money. And we're also ingratiating ourselves into society. Society goes, well, there might be a lot of cookers and sovereign citizens, but their bloody shoes are cheap, And even getting to a point that if we got money behind us as a community, we could do things like funding kids' soccer teams or kids' football teams, like the Lions did. And so right now, with this, they see us as these cookers, but with looking ahead 20 years, in 20 years, suddenly every town you go to, there's a Be-Free op shop, and there's, something that we sponsor, and people go, well, you call them cookers, but I find that they're really good people. They're good Christian people, or whatever religion we are. And they're caring, and they look after people, which is what we do, and selling that, because the government at the moment is just selling us as apprentice terrorists, really. That's the wording that in your word, man, you said the sovereign citizen are not following laws. That's what they're doing, which is literally the opposite of 99.9% of us.
Yeah, it doesn't get any more serious than our livelihoods.
Yes,
and
right.
That is it's really a frontal assault on livelihoods through the restriction of cash flow. If you want to put it into kind of finance terms like that, because if you're restricted from that, then it doesn't. How long did it take? It takes about 6 weeks before people are, of no income, before they're basically defaulting
on their ass.
Yeah.
We saw this in it. I remember interviewing, and if you're watching Michael, he was a nurse, and his wife, they had a young child, and they did an interview really early on, and it was heartbreaking. And they didn't want to take the jab, and they were going to lose their job. And they lost their jobs. And the next time I heard about them, they were living in a caravan that they bought. And the next time I heard about them, they were living in the car, and they'd lost their child. And they were still holding on to their thing that they didn't want to take it. But it was just tragically sad, and the only one that's going to care for them is our community. I mean, there was another guy I interviewed, Glenn, who wasn't on our side. Gavin, sorry, wasn't on our side. He was vaccinated, but a huge ulcer on his leg from a vaccine injury. And he was living under a bridge because the government had just discarded him as one of the forgotten people. And when I interviewed him, Cafe Locked, our community, paid all his medical bills. He's on the other side. We owe him nothing. He's from the side that kicked us out and discarded us as though we were trash. And yet my community of trash that I'm a part of, the Chloe community, paid this man's medical bills. He was so overcome he couldn't believe it, because all he got from the other side of the world was telling him he was nothing wrong, or just, oh well, tough luck. And then we helped him. So that's why I feel that God is with us in a way. We're doing something good here. We're not bad people. We're not. You know what I mean? I know there's been a few murders, a few this, but we're not bad people.
And as you said, I think it's in our interest to break down those barriers.
Yeah.
And people who break down division are probably more likely to prevail because that's just the way that it works. But in terms of tribalism, I know that you use the word tribe, but I think it's tribal thinking that was a lot of the problem that we found in terms of the professions that still exists. Because
Good
I've
point.
noticed that people go to get trained in, let's say, medicine. They'll say, "Okay, just tell me what I need to know to get a job," and they do the tests and they say, "Right, now you're part of one of us. Here's the professional standards you should go to." "Oh, yes, no problem, the professionals." And so then what we've seen is people adhering to those things that they've been taught as if it was part of their tribal responsibilities, and they're sticking up for them even in the face of evidence to the contrary. That when I think of tribal thinking, that's where I think it can have a negative aspect, where it closes you off to other truth. So, I know where you're coming from, Michael.
Oh, that was the pure blood. I remember a lot of people wearing pure blood for a while. You don't see it as much anymore. I remember at the time thinking we can't have that. I actually
Mm,
used to tell people you can't have that because what we're doing is telling people you can't join us. We're a select group, and you'll never get over that border because you're vaccinated. So you'll never join us. Where I actually fact that was detrimental because we need more numbers, and we need the vaccinated as well. Where we need all the numbers we can to change things so that we do head to somewhere that is more conducive to humanity and humanity's soul than the way we're being taken.
a and
Um,
and so just to expand on your point there, I think what we've realized is a lot of us have been thinking in the abstract. And I know that when I did my degrees that a lot of it's in the abstract, and you kind of make models and you have to deny reality to some point in order to kind of be a part of that tribe if you're learning economics or you're learning medicine. Um, but getting away from the abstract thinking, if we can do that for a second, and to think about why having a country where justice is possible, what is the main motivation for people to want to be part of first? You can think of it being part of a country, but then we're talking about building numbers within the being in terms of what you call the freedom movement. Then what is the main basis for people to want to join these groups? And people, if you think in the abstract, it might be some people might say to display their personal preferences, or it might be this, or I'm just what I want to. I know where I want to get, but I just wanted to give it to you to see where you might be thinking, and if you're thinking the same way I am in terms of what I think why people join groups.
Uh, well, I've never really been a member of any group. I've never been someone that did groups, even in school. I didn't do scouts or anything. I've always been a bit of a loner, to be honest, which is the black sheep thing. This is the biggest group I've ever been a part of in my life, and I love it, even though it has a lot of issues. Um, I joined it because I needed it, because it gave me sanity when there was a hurricane of insanity racing around me. Every time I met another person like myself, or who literally was on the same wavelength, um, I didn't feel alone. I felt there was hope. Even that's why interviewing Jess last night just filled my hope tanks. I thought I'm the generation. I'm on the way out, and here's this 22-year-old warrior who is going to be very hard for society to corrupt because they've already tried, they failed, and she is who she is. And so I had skills as a theater producer working with nothing. We had to put on plays, but we were always figuring out how to do something for less because less was all we had. And so those skills were very were basically of worth in the movement. I think the first thing I did where I thought, wow, this works, was when I got that violinist, Markian, to play the national anthem without us singing it. Did you ever see that?
I did.
Yeah, that was me producing that, and it was the
Yep.
producer and me could see it. Like we're in the middle, we get everyone to hold on their phones, and we'll have this moment. So there was things like that that I just had a knack for, that I'd learned through years of trying to put on plays with nothing, and so I found a community where I could have worth because I had skills that could help them. And then I remember, I don't know if he's watching, but I have a friend, Forsh, who was in the movement, and there was one day where the march, for some reason, they couldn't figure out who was leading the march, and it looked on the verge of crumbling. And then he stood up and he said, "No, come on, we're not doing this. This is important." This one man who'd never led anything stood up, and for months after that, he led the march every weekend. And this is what I loved about the movement. It 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 gave people purpose, and that purpose gave them strength, and they were doing things that they never thought they could do. Another person was Tracy, who we used to call the Jedi, because she was the best at getting hugs in the Free Hug Army, and she brought people up. She could get, she'd have 100 people with masks on. They used to take the masks off to hug her. She just had this way, and yet before that, she'd been a shop assistant in Kmart. Just an NPC. Not to be rude, she'll admit that. We're here suddenly. Now she's an activist. She speaks. So our movement gave people strength and conviction, and we supported each other. In that particular time, it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And just let's talk some of the great things we have done. Like, I think, Monica Smith, there's people think other ways of her, but she went to jail, came out of jail, had Reignite Democracy. She had a lot of powerful stuff. You know what I mean? Really powerful stuff. Topher Field, he's done amazing. He's had ups and downs, but he's still going. He's still banging away. Avi, love him or hate him, he's right there. He's always in the thick of it. He's a great asset to our community. Rukshan is a gift. I still say at the shrine that day, the person with the most Anzac spirit was Avi, because as everyone else was running away for the bullets or getting arrested and the police were going crazy shooting people, he stood his ground and he filmed history. And if he hadn't filmed that history, we wouldn't have had it. No one would have believed that the police, no one in Australia would have believed the Victorian police would have shot freedom protesters who were sitting on the shrine. They would never have believed it. But because he had the courage to film it, we have that footage now. You can't question it. And I've seen this around. There's Margie in Maryborough, makes mugs for the community. You can go to Cafe Lockdown, you can see the mugs, so she likes to do fundraising for mugs. There's Kay Reid, very powerful leader in Bright. She's one of the Cardi girls. These are just people I interact with a lot. But you see these, there's another guy, I saw him the other day. He's a tall Sri Lankan guy called Edward. And he goes out, he works on the construction, and then he finishes his job, and wherever he is, he goes out and he doesn't go home until he's done 2,000 homes with Against the Who. You know what I mean? And he just goes home by that. That's what I call the army of light. Because what I do believe, and I've always believed this, is that there's not one bullet that's going to end this. There's not one bit of truth that's suddenly seen us all crumbling down. This is like the 12 apostles, which have gone now. There's only about 2 or 3 left. And these monoliths were brought down by lots of little waves. And what we are is the waves. We're very persistent. We're very resilient. We fail a lot, but we keep coming back. We keep coming back, and we keep coming back. And I feel that if we never quit and continue doing it, but at the same time refine what we're doing, hold a mirror up to ourselves and go, what's working? What's not? Why is it not working? Can we fix it? Is there anything else we can try? That we can actually achieve a result. And this is why I also think division might be good, Because say you were the supreme leader of the freedom movement. Say we went, Brother Pearson, tell us what to do. You're the leader. And you set up a hierarchy, and down the bottom, someone like Jess comes along with a brilliant idea. But because we've got this rigid hierarchy, her idea is going to find it very hard to get to the top. Where at the moment, if we're all divided in these little tribes and we're all trying to climb the mountain, if we're all trying to climb it different ways, then if you are not the leader and you have a great idea, you might only need one or two people to join you and you head off. Forest of the Fallen did that. There's other ideas that have worked. Adrian, with his councils in Port Hedland, even though he's been sacked, the councils now are challenging the government about DNA. And I think this is because all these different, like whack-a-mole, all these different people are doing things. It's very, very, very hard to control, like a brush fire. So that's why I'm not always worried that division is such a bad thing at the moment.
No,
I rant, man. You just shut me up. I just fucking rant.
Ideally, within a hierarchy, we're all in the service of others. And I think there's an element of a desire for protection as well. Not necessarily physical, but also that spiritual and mental. As you said, you felt things were crazy, and when you got together with other people who could speak sense and point out the flaws in what's happening, you go, yeah, that feels so. The truth is relaxing. That's how you know it's the truth. When you're tense and you're nervous, you just go, well, I think of all the, the lessons in the Bible and the stories and all that, people get wrapped up in all that, but the main theme that runs through is do not fear.
Fear
and from that, the rest of it tells you the reasons why that's the case. So that's your reset. Do not fear, and anything is possible then. But if we're able to show that we're rational, reasonable, logical, responsible, people will be drawn to that presence.
Do you know what I might end with this? Do you know what I loved about Epic, I think, and the marches as well, is we were loud and proud. Look at us. We're in this march. We've got our banners. We don't like what's happening, and we're not aggressive, but we're willing to stand our ground and say we don't like it. But you could see us. And at Epic, you could really see us. They didn't want to see us. That's why they lied about our numbers.
And it was perfect for the time.
Yeah, but now, as you go around town to town, there might be people out there who are on our side, but because like I say this all the time, but I say it all the time because it's true. I was watching an Uber when I'm in Sydney. It was pretty hot yesterday, and I saw an Uber driver on his bicycle with a turban on. And I thought, that must be stinking hot. And yet he wears it because he's proud that he's a Sikh. So he puts up with the discomfort. He puts up with people calling him towelhead, whatever, because he's proud of who he is. The Amish are the same. Even the woke are doing it. I know we've reached peak woke, but the woke walk down with their rainbow-colored hair and I believe a man can give birth, and I've got the rainbow hair to show it. We blend into society, which actually communicates to the world that we're not actually proud of who we are, or we're very scared of being seen by the others that we are who we are. So we stay quiet. Like Rosemary Marshall was telling me that she's finding it harder and harder to get people to interview at the Forest of the Fallen. They're more scared to. And I find if I go to town now, even if I meet with our people and they're all rah, rah, this is coming, common law. And I say, would you be interviewed doing that? They go, no. So people are more scared now than they were during COVID. When I was traveling the country with Cret and Wendy, and even for a year or so afterwards, I'd have 15 people lined up sometimes wanting to do an interview. That was the most we did in one day, 15. But we'd always do 4 or 5. We'd be hours there doing interviews. Now they don't want to be recorded. Now, and that I think is dangerous because that shows that were frightened, that show, and if you give in to fear, then fear takes more of you. Where I think at some time, and this is why this has come along. 832 was going, but it sort of plateaued. We're hoping that this people put it on their, have you got the link for this, Cal? She's sitting there chatting away. So but it's, whether it's stickers, whether it's, we got it on caps. And that's only one thing. If someone else comes out with a better idea, I'd love it. If someone came out with some fashion we could wear, I don't know. The hippies had tie-dye and it worked. I'm not saying we should wear tie-dye, but the hippies, whether you love them or hate them, they basically conquered a decade with fashion, philosophy, and people still wear their, look, this is probably some, they still wear their uniforms today,
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's these are the things I think that we have to do. I would love to be walking down a street and see someone proudly wearing something, and then I can go, wow, beep, 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 hey, and that would give you a sense that you're not alone. And I think the more that would do it, the more of us would be proud of who we are. And the reason I think we should be proud is because I think we're beautiful. We stood up to darkness. We became light. In our groups, we glow. When we're in little communities, we glow. I've been to so many groups. In Perth, I remember there's a guy over
I
there I
think what
call
you're
King
referring
Cole.
to is critical thinkers.
Yeah.
You know,
I was in I just finished on this. I was in this group, and I've been to loads of these groups, but this night it really hit me. He's just got a normal suburban house in the back streets of Perth, and we're in this open air shed, and there was a judge there, a federal court judge, I think. There was people there who pushed trolleys. There was carpenters. There was unemployed people. There were single mums. All these people who would not normally meet because of social norms were sitting there chatting like crazy, getting on like a house on fire, and not talking about the weather or footy, but about what it means to be human. What are we going to do? And I thought, this has never happened before in my life. And I'm a part of this. And it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And I wish we could market that beauty. I think if we could and be proud of it, I think there's so many lonely people out there, so many people who feel disenfranchised, who feel lost, who literally go through their life with suicide sitting in the back seat waiting to go, can we leave yet? That I think they need what we have. And I think they'd gravitate towards us, but they can't see us because we don't have the symbols or something to wear to stand out, to let them see that you are not alone. It is becoming dark, but we are people of light. We've decided to stay with the light, and we've paid the price. We've lost family, lost friends, lost jobs, but we're still alive. We're not dying, and we're strong.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
I could see you with a blue bee tattoo next to here, like under here.
Yeah. Oh, look, yeah,
That's a joke.
I know. Yeah. Oh, but congratulations on your new book.
Oh, cheers! Yeah,
Okay,
it's selling, man. I'm so pleased. It was John Stapleton approached me, and that's another thing. We're thinking of setting up a company, him and I, done through here, called Banned Books, the Banned Book Company, because I'm a real believer in art. And so, if you were to write a book, and it's not a big book, it's people try to write these huge monoliths, which people don't have the time to read. But remember when we were young, they used to have those cowboy books. They were about this big. They'd have them in the news agency, and the old fellas would read them. You know what I mean? The High Noon and stuff.
Could be a
I think
series.
we could,
Yeah.
I think we could have our stories in there. There's so many people have been through such traumatic events and come through and discovered that they could have their books like that. So if they have a book that's 10,000 words long, we're thinking of selling those. And so someone who's on our side, but has to go work in the office could actually have this bit of revolution, like this revolutionary little book hidden in their pocket. So you know what I mean? They might be in the belly of the beast, but they've got a bit of the light within them. And so we're looking at a lot of things like this to basically give our movement an identity, because I think we need to establish an identity. Who are we? Because we're something great. It's time to define it. Even the fact we fight means we have difference of opinions, but we're still together. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
this is what I'm trying to do. And the music and stuff like this, Matt Lawson might be putting his album on the Clo. Matt Lawson is an incredible man, incredible poet, and incredibly brave. And so this is what we're trying to do with our side of Cafe Lockdown, is to try cement some form of identity for who we are.
Mm-hmm. And it's I noticed that your book's available on Amazon, Goodread, Booktopia. You've got a better chance of getting into the libraries because it's. Yep. And we were saying before the show, what does victory look like? I think victory looks like when our stories are taken for granted.
Yeah. Do you know what victory is to me?
What's that?
When your great-grandson gets up and he doesn't even comprehend how free he is to be himself, and he has no idea that the pain and suffering that we went through to afford him the liberty that he takes for granted. It's basically like we're planting the seeds of a forest whose shade we will never experience. That's what I think victory is for me. That these kids, there's no shrines to us, there's nothing. But basically, we, at the darkest time that I've seen in humanity's history, we're looking to be made redundant by AI and automation, and there's a huge attack on God, as we saw in the Olympics, where they were just pissing on the Last Supper. There's a huge attack on God. We did what had to be done to defend what is good about humanity, and we overcame our differences, and we succeeded. We sold a better future to our community, so they suddenly went, yeah, no, we don't want this. We don't want AI. We don't want everything watching us in cameras. We don't want all this surveillance. We don't want digital ID. We don't want a credit score system. See ya. And they went this way into a future where fundamentally they were accepted and prized for being who they are. Like you said, a future where every human being has intrinsic value. That's victory to me. You want to add anything to that?
No, mate. I thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I think it might be a good time to leave it there if you're happy.
Yeah. Thanks, brother. Thanks. Sorry I did all the talking, but that's this. But and if anybody else wants to come on, we're thinking of doing more things like this. I'll just put this up before we go. Is it coming up? There it is. So this is coming up. This is the 40-hour meta famine, November 14, 15, 16. So this was thought up by Robin from Courage is the Cure. And basically, we're going to do 40 hours in 4 10-hour slots. Malik's coming on, the White Rabbit, Hoodie and Lada. We've reached out to a lot of people overseas. The High Wire is getting back to us. They said they're very interested, so we might have some big guests on. We're getting a lot of Canadians on. We're going to get a lot of English people on. And what we want to try to raise awareness about digital ID, and not basically, maybe we shouldn't go that way, whether we do or not. But what we're really doing, it's a last hurrah to the larrikins in our soul, because I think we all covet our larrikin spirit, the Paul Hogan within us, but we're basically getting to a point where that person is gone or unwanted in this modern society. So we're going to have an extraordinary lot of fun with it, talking about what the hell we want, talk absolutely freely as much as we can, and hopefully maybe the rest of the world will join us to celebrate the beauty of the Australian larrikin. So that'll be coming up on the 14th, 15th, and 16th of November. So you hear more of that soon. Glenn, Thank you for coming on. I love how you think, man. You think you just got this calm, deliberate, critical thinking sort of. It's really sweet, and we really need it actually. It's we need the ones that think big and wild and vision, but we need the clear thinkers too. So I wish you well with whatever you do, and thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
No worries. And we're going to go out. So we're going to go out with this. This is called. It's a new song, but it basically was written about a farmer's wife. We heard this story from Kay Reid. The woman didn't want to be interviewed. It was very tragic. And apparently she lives on a farm where her entire family has died due to the vaccine. And she's been left alone. And the farm is dying around her. It's a tragic story, but it actually happened. It's a part of history. And so this is like trying to keep that little bit of history alive, but through song. So this is a ballad to the farmer's wife. God bless, Glenn. Thank you so much for putting up with me. Take care.
We were farmers near Castlemaine when COVID came and shut our whole town down. And as the kids and I hid at home, my husband risked it all by working to keep our little farm alive, whilst I did everything that the government told me to. And I made sure that my kids followed suit. I'd always thought that the end of it all would be another war, and not me and my grown kids sitting here and watching the TV, and not me and my kids watching TV. And outside the windows, the wheat continued to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. As the barley rolls and dances with the wind. But then the vaccines arrived to save us all, so we lined up and rolled up our sleeves. We lined up and rolled up our sleeves, gratefully, 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 gratefully. On a Monday night, my daughter suddenly died when a blood clot burst inside her lungs. Then a few weeks later, my husband found my son on our kitchen floor. We found our son dead on our kitchen floor. We buried our beautiful kids with all of their unrealized dreams. And outside the windows, the wheat continues to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. And outside the windows, the wheat continued to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. As the barley rolls and dances with the wind. And everyone knew what had happened, but no one would say. Together they were all as silent as the moon. And then COVID moved on, just like the flu. The only difference is that I was now alone. For my husband is gone now too. Our doctor told me that his heart that was so strong, it had seen him build this farm, had just suddenly given way, had just suddenly given way. And outside the windows, the wheat continued to grow as the barley rolled and danced with the wind. And outside the windows, fences need repairing, and the harvest is long overdue. Plus I know the bank will come knocking soon. I know the bank will come knocking soon.